Ilara Voss had 30 seconds before Derek found her. She could feel it. The way you feel a storm before it arrives, not from sound or sight, but from the pressure in the air that tells your body to run before your mind catches up. She had learned to read that pressure over 2 years of being with him. It lived in her chest now like a second heartbeat, and tonight it was hammering. The charity gala at the Hartwell Grand was supposed to be work. She had been hired to photograph the event for a non-profit that supported children's education programs. It was a good job, a clean job, and she had been careful. She had not told Derek where she was going. She had not told anyone who might tell him. She had taken a cab instead of driving so her car would not be visible outside. She had been so careful. And still, she had spotted him 40 minutes ago near the entrance, standing in a tuxedo he had no reason to own, watching the room with the particular stillness of a person who is not there for the food or the conversation. He was there for her. That was 3 years of her life, standing across a ballroom in a bow tie. Ilara moved through the crowd, with her camera held up like a shield, keeping her face turned slightly away, her body angled toward the far side of the room. She photographed a woman, in a gold dress, laughing with her husband. She photographed a group of businessmen near the ice sculpture. She kept moving. The key to not being caught in a room full of people was to keep moving. A moving target was harder to corner, harder to trap, harder to have a quiet, controlled conversation with, that would end with her agreeing to something she did not agree with. She had learned that the hard way too. The problem was the exits. There were 3. The main entrance, where Derek had been standing. The side corridor that led to the kitchen, which would put her in a service area with no obvious way out to the street. And the far terrace doors, which opened onto a balcony 14 floors above Michigan Avenue. None of those options were good. All of them felt like corners. She stopped near the bar and pretended to review the images on her camera screen while she thought. The photographs were actually quite good. She noticed that the way she always noticed things she had done well, with a small, quiet acknowledgement that she kept entirely to herself. There was a shot of an elderly couple holding hands near the window that was genuinely beautiful. She would like to have printed it larger than the usual catalog size. She filed the thought away. Derek was 20 feet behind her now. She could feel it. She turned her head just slightly, just enough to confirm it through her peripheral vision, without making eye contact, and yes, there he was, moving through the crowd with that easy, social smile on his face, nodding at strangers like a man who belonged exactly where he was, which was something he had always been good at. He was charming. That was the first thing she had noticed about him, and the last thing she had forgotten. She needed to do something. Right now, she needed a wall between herself and him that was bigger than a crowd. Her eyes moved across the room in a quick, desperate sweep, and they stopped. He was standing near the far end of the bar, alone, with a glass of water he had not touched. That was the first thing she noticed. Not his height, though he was tall. Not his face, though it was the kind of face that made people look twice. The first thing she noticed was that he was the only person in a room full of people who looked completely at peace with not talking to anyone. Everyone else at a gala like this was performing, working the room, smiling on schedule. This man looked like he had simply decided to exist in this space for a specific length of time, and was waiting for that length of time to pass, and he was entirely fine with that. He wore a dark suit with no tie. His hair was cut close on the sides and slightly longer on top, dark brown going almost black under the chandelier light. He had a strong jaw and dark eyes that were currently aimed at the middle distance, in a way that suggested he was thinking about something entirely unrelated to galas, charity events, or anyone in the room. Ilara did not think. Thinking would have stopped her. She moved. She crossed the space between them in 8 steps and stopped at his side. Up close, he was even more self-contained than he had appeared from across the room. She could feel that she had entered some radius of his personal space, and that he was aware of it, though he did not look at her immediately. "I'm sorry," she said, keeping her voice low, steady, and controlled, because she had learned that the more frightened she was, the more important it was to sound like she was not. "I know you don't know me. I know this is a strange thing to say to a stranger, but there is someone behind me who I am very afraid of, and I need you to help me for approximately the next 5 minutes, and I would be grateful for the rest of my life." He turned his head and looked at her then. His eyes were very dark and very calm. He looked at her face the way a person looks at a document they are reading carefully, not with emotion, but with attention. "What do you need?" he said. His voice was low and unhurried. The simplicity of the question almost undid her. Not who is it, not why, not what did you do, just, what do you need? She swallowed once. Pretend you know me, she said. Please, stand near me, and look like I'm yours. Just for a few minutes. He won't approach if he thinks I belong to someone. Something shifted in his expression. It was small, and she almost missed it. Belong to someone, he repeated. Not a question. Not quite a judgment. Just a careful repetition. The way you repeat a phrase to test its weight. I know how it sounds, she said quickly. It sounds like you've needed to say those words before, he said. She did not answer that, because there was no answer that would not cost her something in a public place, and she did not have that kind of currency right now. He set his glass of water down on the bar. He turned to face her slightly, shifting his body so that his shoulder was angled toward the room in a way that was quiet but definite, the body language of a man, indicating that the person beside him was in his company. It was subtle. It was also exactly right. What is his name? He asked. Derek Hale, she said. He nodded once, like he was filing it away. And yours? Ilara, she said. Ilara Voss. Kaylin Doran, he said. She had heard that name. She was almost certain she had heard that name, though she could not place it immediately. It was the kind of name that existed at the edges of news she did not follow closely. Business stories she had skimmed, the sort of quiet, enormous presence that did not advertise itself. Derek appeared at her left side approximately 40 seconds later. He was smiling. He was always smiling when he was angrier than he wanted to show. Ilara, he said. I didn't know you were going to be here tonight. Derek, she said. She kept her voice even. Derek's eyes moved to Kaylin with the quick, measuring assessment of a man who had never been challenged and was trying to decide if this qualified. Kaylin looked back at him with an expression that contained no aggression and no warmth and absolutely no invitation. It was simply a steady, unanswerable look. The kind of look that makes a person realize, without being told, that the conversation they were about to start is one they would not finish well. I don't think we've met, Derek said to Kaylin, with a smile that was trying to be easy. No, said Kaylin. That was all he said. Derek held the smile for another moment, then let it go by about 10%. He turned back to Ilara. We should catch up. It's been a while. It hasn't, she said. Ilara. She's with me, said Kaylin, quietly, completely without drama. Derek looked at him again. Something moved behind Derek's eyes, a calculation, a recalibration, and then he smiled once more, differently this time, with something sharper underneath it. Of course, Derek said. I didn't realize. He glanced at Ilara. We'll talk another time. We won't, she said. Derek left. Ilara stood still for a full 10 seconds after he walked away, because her legs were not entirely reliable, and she needed to be sure before she moved. She took one breath, then another. Thank you, she said. He'll be back, Kaylin said. He was watching the direction Derek had gone. Not tonight, but he'll be back. She knew that. She had known that for 3 months. She had known it the night she ended things, when Derek had stood in her doorway and said, with perfect calm, that this was not how things were going to go. She had known it the next morning when she found the single white flower on her car, which Derek had always given her early in their relationship, left now on the hood of her car without a note, which was somehow more frightening than anything with words on it. I know, she said. She looked at Kaylin Doran. He was looking at her with that same careful, reading a document attention, and she had the disorienting feeling that he was understanding things about her situation that she had not said out loud. What would actually help? He asked. It was such a direct question. Most people, when they helped someone out of an uncomfortable situation, wanted to provide comfort, reassurance, a pat on the back, some gentle words about how things would get better. Kaylin Doran looked like a man who had no particular use for any of those things, and wanted to know what would actually be useful. Ilara thought about it honestly. If he believed I was seriously involved with someone, she said, he would move on. He wouldn't stop being Derek, but he would move the problem somewhere else. He needs to be the one who ends things. He has never once let anyone else end anything. Kaylin was quiet for a moment. How long would you need? He asked. She looked at him carefully. She was not entirely sure what she was being asked, but she could feel the shape of it. "A month," she said. "If someone saw us together consistently for a month, it would be in the circles he moves in. He would know, and he would decide it was his idea to let me go." Kalen picked up his glass of water and looked at it. "I have a counter-proposal," he said. "You don't have to make any proposal," she said quickly. "What you did tonight was already 30 days, he said. "You would stay at my building. My security team would handle the practical problem. At the end of 30 days, the arrangement concludes, and you have your life back." She stared at him. "Why would you do that?" she said. "Because Derek Hale is not a simple problem," he said, "and you have already tried the simple solutions." She had. She had changed her number twice. She had moved once. She had filed one report that had led to nothing, because Derek knew how to be frightening, without ever doing anything that could be written down cleanly. "I don't know you," she said. "No," he agreed. "I have no reason to trust you." "Also true," he said. She looked at him. He did not add anything to make it easier. He did not explain himself or reassure her or soften the edges. He simply waited, and the waiting was itself a kind of answer. It said that he was not going to pressure her, that the decision was fully hers, that he would accept either outcome. She thought about the flower on her car. She thought about the 3 missed calls she had gotten last Tuesday at 2 in the morning. She thought about the way Zoe, her best friend, had started walking her to her car after their dinners out, because Zoe was scared, even when she didn't say so. She thought about what her life looked like from the outside, and she thought about what it felt like from the inside, and she understood that those two things were not the same. 30 days, she said. 30 days, he said. She shifted her camera strap on her shoulder. "I need to finish the job tonight. I was hired to photograph this event." "Then finish the job," he said, and picked his glass of water back up. She walked back into the room and spent the next 90 minutes doing the best work she had done in months. Her hands were completely steady. She photographed the elderly couple by the window again, from a slightly different angle, and got an even better shot. She photographed the children's artwork displayed along the far wall, each piece made by a kid in one of the programs the nonprofit supported, and she took her time with each one. When she looked up, Kalen Doran was still in the same spot. He had not moved. He was not watching her, precisely, but he was aware of her. She could feel it the way you feel a fixed point when everything around you is moving. She did not know what to do with that feeling. She finished at 10:30. She found him near the coat room. "Ready," she said. He handed her coat to her, which she had not given him, and had not expected him to have, and she understood that he must have collected it from the coat check at some point, without saying anything. She put it on and did not comment. They left together. The night air was cold and sharp in the way Chicago nights were cold in October, cutting through fabric with a directness that felt personal. Kalen opened the door and waited for her to get in, and she got in, and he got in after her, and the car moved into traffic. She held her camera bag in her lap and looked straight ahead. "You don't have to explain yourself to me," he said, after a few minutes. She glanced at him. "I know that feeling," he said, "of needing to justify the situation to someone who's about to help you. You don't. The situation is what it is." She looked back at the window. "You're a stranger," she said, not unkindly, just observationally. "Yes," he said. "But you're the only stranger tonight who asked what I actually needed, instead of telling me what I should do." He did not say anything to that. He looked out his own window at the passing city and was quiet, and the quiet was not uncomfortable. It was simply honest. Two people who did not know each other, sitting in a car in the dark, having just agreed to something that neither of them would have predicted an hour ago. Ilara had not let herself fully breathe since she spotted Derek across the ballroom floor. She let herself breathe now. One slow breath in, one slow breath out. The car moved through the lit-up city, and Kalen Doran did not fill the silence with words it did not need. And that, Ilara thought, was more unusual than almost anything else that had happened tonight. The building they pulled up to had no signage. It was a glass tower in the River North neighborhood, the kind of building that communicated its own importance simply by not needing to announce it. A doorman opened the lobby door before they reached it. The elevator was private and required a key. She noticed all of this with the observational part of her brain that never fully turned off. the photographer's habit of cataloging detail even when the rest of her was doing something else entirely. The penthouse floor held a single apartment. He unlocked the door and held it open. The space inside was large and dark except for the city light coming through floor-to-ceiling windows that ran the entire length of the far wall. The skyline was magnificent and slightly unreal, like a painting of itself. She stood just inside the door and looked at it. "The guest room is on the left," he said. "I'll have someone bring your things tomorrow, if you tell me what you need." She turned around. He had not come in far. He was standing near the entrance, his coat still on, his hands in his pockets. "Tomorrow," she said. "I want to understand what this actually involves." "Of course," he said. "And I want it clear that this is an arrangement, not something else." "Understood," he said. She looked at him for a moment. He looked back at her, with that same even, unreadable steadiness. "Good night then," she said. "Good night, Alara Voss," he said. She went to the guest room. It had a bed with white sheets and a window that looked east over the city, and she sat on the edge of the mattress in the dark for a long time, without turning on the light, and she thought about the fact that she had just handed 30 days of her life to a man she had spoken to for less than 2 hours. She thought about how, despite everything, she did not feel afraid. That, she thought, was either very reassuring, or something she should think about more carefully. She decided to think about it in the morning. She set her camera bag on the chair near the window, lay back on the white sheets, and did not dream of anything at all. Outside, Chicago kept going. The lights stayed on. The river reflected the bridges, and somewhere below, in the lobby of a building with no sign on the outside, a man named Kalen Doran stood for a moment with his keys in his hand, looking at nothing in particular, before he moved toward his own room, and did not dream of anything either. 30 days, they had both said. Neither of them thought, yet, about how different the world could look in 30 days, how much a person could learn about another person in that time, how the distance between strangers and something else was not as large as it seemed the night you first decided to trust someone you did not know. Neither of them thought about that yet. But the city outside knew. Cities always know. They have seen this before. 2 people, and a strange beginning, and 30 days, that neither of them is counting quite the way they said they would. It was still early. There was time. She woke up at 7 in the morning to the sound of absolutely nothing, which was unusual. Alara's apartment on the north side was above a coffee shop, and the coffee shop opened at 6, and the smell of ground coffee and the low hum of the espresso machine were the first things she was aware of every single morning. That was her normal. That was the texture of her days starting. This morning there was silence, clean white light through windows she did not recognize, and the brief, disorienting moment of not knowing where she was that lasted exactly 3 seconds before everything came back. The gala, Derek, the man at the bar. She sat up and pressed both hands flat on the bed and breathed once. Then she got up. The guest bathroom was larger than her kitchen and had 3 different kinds of soap and a bathrobe hanging on the back of the door with the tags still on. She did not use the bathrobe. She washed her face and pulled her hair back and put on the same clothes she had worn home from the gala, which was not ideal, but was what she had. She picked up her camera bag and walked out to find the rest of the apartment. The penthouse in daylight was different from the penthouse at night. At night it had been all shadow and city light. In the morning it was precise. Every surface was clean and clear and intentional. The furniture was good quality and not particularly warm. Everything chose function over comfort in a way that was very organized and slightly cold. There were no photographs on the walls, no personal items on the surfaces. The bookshelves were full, but arranged with the specific tidiness of someone who put books away immediately after reading them, and did not use bookmarks. She was examining the spines on one shelf, a mix of financial history, architecture, a worn copy of a philosophy book she recognized from a college course, and one novel in French, when she heard movement behind her. Kalen Doran walked into the living room from the hallway that led to the primary bedroom. He was already dressed. Dark trousers, a light gray pullover, no tie. He was carrying a phone and reading something on the screen, with the focused expression of a man who had already been awake for 2 hours, and had already handled several things. He looked up and saw her. Neither of them said good morning. It was not an unfriendly silence. It was simply 2 people who were not yet sure what the morning version of this arrangement looked like. Coffee, he said, and it was somewhere between a question and an offer. Please, she said. He went to the kitchen. She followed at a slight distance and sat down at the counter island on one of the high stools, while he operated an espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a professional setting. She watched him do it. He knew exactly what he was doing. No hesitation, no consulting a dial. The practiced ease of someone who had done this particular task 10,000 times. He set a cup in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it. It was very good. He sat down across from her with his own cup and put his phone face down on the counter. I have something for you to look at, he said, and slid a thin folder across the marble surface. She looked at it, then at him. Open it, he said. She opened it. Inside was a single document, typed, clean, and organized into short numbered sections. She read it. She read it again. She set it back down and looked at the marble counter for a moment, while she thought about what she had read. This is a contract, she said. Yes. A legal document outlining a temporary protective arrangement for a period of 30 days, with specific terms regarding my presence in your building, your security team's responsibility toward me, and both parties' rights to terminate at any time, with 48 hours' notice. She paused. You had this written this morning? I have a lawyer on retainer, he said. I called at 6. She looked at the document again. It was thorough, without being complicated. It said exactly what it meant. It did not contain anything that would require her to give up anything beyond her time and her location for 30 days. There was a clause that stated specifically that the arrangement carried no personal obligations of any kind, social or otherwise, beyond 2 public appearances per week in Kalen's company, in order to establish the visible nature of the arrangement for anyone in Derek's social circles who might observe and report back. 2 appearances per week, she said. Dinners, events, that kind of thing. Public enough to be seen, not so frequent that it becomes complicated. She turned a page. This section here, where it says you take no responsibility for outcomes beyond the scope of the arrangement. What does that mean, specifically? It means, he said, that if Derek Hale does something outside of what this arrangement can address, if he decides to escalate in a way that requires legal intervention rather than social deterrence, that is handled separately and is not my liability. She nodded slowly. That was fair. She had not expected him to solve everything. She had not even thought to expect it. What she had hoped for was a buffer, a pause, enough space to breathe and figure out the next step without Derek closing in on her. And my work, she said. Your work continues as normal. This is your life, Alara. I'm a variable in it for 30 days, not the center of it. She looked at him. He was looking at the document, not at her, and there was something in the way he said that, the flatness of it, the practicality, that made her realize he genuinely meant it. He was not doing this to gain something over her. He was not collecting a favor. He was offering something with the same kind of efficiency he used to make coffee. She picked up the pen that had been placed beside the folder. There's one thing I want to add, she said. He waited. I get to keep photographing, she said. Whatever I see here, whatever I observe during these 30 days, it's mine. I don't share it, I don't publish it, I don't sell it. But I keep shooting. It's how I process things. If I can't do that, I can't be here. He looked at her now. You want to photograph my home, he said. I photograph everything, she said. It's not personal, it's not commercial, it's just how I see the world. I put it through the camera, and then I understand it. He was quiet for a moment. Not me, he said. I'll try, she said honestly. Something moved in his eyes. It was brief, and not easily named. All right, he said. She signed the document. She capped the pen and slid everything back across the counter. He folded the document and set it aside. Your things, he said. What do you need from your apartment? She thought about it. Camera equipment, clothes for 2 weeks, my laptop, my chargers. There's a blue folder on my desk with contracts I'm currently working on. I'll send someone this morning. I'll write down the address and the lock code, she said. He nodded and passed her a notepad. She wrote it down, clear and neat, and pushed it back to him. She drank her coffee. He looked at his phone for a moment, then put it back down. You should know, he said, that people will see this. If we appear together publicly, it will be noticed. My name generates attention. I know who you are, she said. I placed it last night, eventually. You run Doran Capital. You own property across 6 cities. The tabloids call you the Alpha King. She said it evenly, without weight, because it was just information. None of that changes what this is. He looked at her with a faint expression that she could not immediately categorize. It was not surprise, exactly. More like recalibration. Most people treat that information differently, he said. I'm not most people, she said. Not as a boast but as a simple statement of fact. She finished her coffee and set the cup down. What do you do with your mornings? She asked. He looked at her for a second. Work, he said. I'm on European time for the first few hours. Markets. Then I'll stay out of your way, she said. I have editing to do from last night. She got up and took her camera bag and went back to the guest room. She sat up at the desk by the window with her laptop and her card reader and worked for 3 hours without stopping, culling and editing the images from the gala with the focused, efficient attention she gave every job. The light through the east window shifted as the morning moved, and she kept working, and the city spread out below her, and she did not think about Derek or contracts or what 30 days meant. She thought about the elderly couple by the window. She pulled up that image. She looked at it for a long time. The way the woman's hand rested inside the man's, the way neither of them was looking at each other, but both of them were smiling the same small, private smile. The kind you can only smile when you are completely comfortable with where you are. She cropped it, adjusted the light, looked at the result. It was one of the best photographs she had taken in a year. She saved it to a separate folder she kept for images she considered for her own collection, not client work, not commercial, but the images that meant something. She had not added anything to that folder in 4 months. She had not realized that until now. At noon, there was a knock on the guest room door. Yes, she said. Kalen opened the door and stood in the frame. He had his coat on. I have a meeting in the Loop. I'll be back by 4. There's food in the kitchen. Whatever you find is yours. She nodded. Thank you. He started to close the door, then stopped. He looked at her. At the laptop, the card reader, the camera equipment spread carefully across the desk. The one from last night, he said. The couple by the window. She stared at him. How do you know about that one? I saw you take it, he said. 3 times. You kept going back. She had not known he was watching. She had not noticed him watching. It was a good moment, she said, carefully. He looked at it on her screen. His expression was unreadable. It is, he said. He closed the door, and she heard him walk down the hall, and then the front door, and then nothing. She sat in the white winter light and looked at the photograph of 2 people who had been together long enough to smile at the same thing without saying a word, and she thought, not for the first time, but more clearly than before, that the man who had just walked out of her door was not what she had expected. She did not know yet what she had expected. She did not know yet what he was instead. She went back to work. The door chimed at 2 in the afternoon. His assistant had arrived with her things from the apartment, packed neatly into 2 bags that had clearly been organized by someone who paid attention to what went with what. The blue folder was on top. She hung up her clothes in the guest closet. She set up her equipment on the desk. She put the blue folder on the nightstand. Then she went to the kitchen and made a sandwich from the very well-stocked refrigerator, and stood at the window and ate it, and looked at the river below, and the bridges, and the city, doing what it always did, which was keep going, regardless of whatever any particular person was managing inside their particular set of 4 walls. She was managing, she thought. She was doing fine. The fact that she had to remind herself of that was something she also filed away. The first public appearance happened on a Thursday evening, 6 days into the arrangement, and it was a dinner at a restaurant called Alderton's. That was the kind of place where the tables were far enough apart that people came, specifically because they did not want to be overheard. Alara wore a dark blue dress she had bought 3 years ago for a photography award ceremony, and had worn twice since. She looked at herself in the mirror of the guest bathroom before they left, and thought, with the detached honesty she generally preferred, that she looked fine. She was not the kind of woman who required extensive preparation. She did not look expensive or carefully constructed. She looked like herself. That, she would find out, was more unusual in Kalen Doran's world than she had anticipated. The restaurant hushed when they walked in. Not obviously, not the way rooms used to hush in old films, with a needle lifting from a record, but she felt the attention shift and settle, the way air pressure shifts when a door opens somewhere nearby. People noticed Kalen the way they noticed things that carry weight. He walked through the room with the same untroubled self-containment he carried everywhere, and Alara walked beside him, and kept her chin level, and did not look at anyone. They were seated at a corner table near the window. "This happens often?" she said, once they were seated. "What specifically?" he said. The room noticing. "Yes," he said simply. She picked up the menu. It did not have prices on it, which told her everything she needed to know about the kind of dinner this was. She read through it with genuine interest, because she liked food, and liked reading about it, and was not going to pretend otherwise, simply because the context was unusual. "The sea bass," she said after a moment. "Good choice," he said, like he had looked at the menu from across the table, and already knew. "Have you been here before?" "Many times." "Do you like it?" He considered this. "It's reliable." She looked up from the menu. "That's an interesting answer." "Is it?" Most people say they like or don't like a place. Reliable implies something different. It implies you've been disappointed enough times by unreliable things, that reliability itself has become the quality you value. He looked at her without speaking for a moment. "You do that a lot," he said. "What?" "Extract meaning from small things." "I'm a photographer," she said. "Small things are the whole job." The waiter came. They ordered. When the waiter left, there was a silence that was companionable, in a way she had not expected from a dinner that was technically a performance. "Tell me what I need to know about your world," she said. "If we're going to be seen together, I should understand the context. Who knows you? Who watches? What matters?" He looked at her with something close to approval, though it was understated enough that she might have been reading it wrong. "My brothers," he said. "Callum and Noel. Callum is older by 3 years, and runs our European operations. He will be suspicious of you immediately, not because of anything you do, but because he is suspicious of anyone new. And Noel? Younger by 5 years. He will like you immediately, and mean it. And your mother?" A pause. "My mother observes. She does not draw conclusions quickly. She will make up her mind about you on her own timeline, and there is nothing you can do to accelerate or prevent it." "That sounds like a smart woman," Ilara said. "She is the smartest person I know," he said, without any complexity about it. Just a fact, stated plainly. She liked that, the uncomplicated way he said it, without pride or bitterness or any of the layered feelings most people carried when they talked about their parents. "Are they aware of the arrangement?" she asked. "No," he said. "As far as they know, this is what it appears to be." She absorbed that. "So we're performing for multiple audiences?" "Yes." "Then I need to know more," she said. "Small things. What you like to eat, what you don't. Whether you use your left hand or your right. How you take your coffee. The kind of things people know when they've been together long enough for it to matter." He looked at her for a moment, like she had said something unexpected. "Right hand," he said. "I don't eat fish. Not for any dietary reason. I simply never liked the texture. Coffee black, no sugar. I wake at 5:30 and I'm not pleasant before I've been awake for an hour, though I don't say much regardless, so it may not be obvious. I dislike crowded events but attend them regularly, because they are occasionally necessary." "Why did you come to the gala?" she asked. "The nonprofits board includes someone I do business with." It was a gesture. "Do you make a lot of gestures?" "Not if I can avoid it," he said. She almost smiled. It was very brief. The food arrived and they ate, and she asked him more questions, and he answered them. Not generously, not with the fullness someone might offer in an ordinary conversation, but honestly, and with the kind of precision that told her he had thought about the answers before he gave them. He did not fill space with words. When he did not know something, he said so. She told him, without being asked, that she had grown up in a small town in southern Illinois, that her mother had been a nurse and her father had driven long-haul trucks, that she had gone to college on a scholarship and studied photojournalism, and then moved to Chicago at 22, with $400 and a camera she had bought second-hand. "And Derek Hale," he said, when she paused. She was quiet for a moment. 2 years, she said. "I was 24 when I met him. He was charming and certain, and he made everything feel very decided, which felt good to someone who was still figuring out where she was going. She looked at her wine glass. The control came slowly. First it was small corrections. My clothes, my schedule. Then it was my friendships. Then my work. She set the glass down. By the time I understood what had happened, I had very little of myself left. Leaving took a long time. And then he decided that leaving was not something I was allowed to do. She said all of this in a steady, measured voice, because she had been over it so many times in her own head that it had stopped being something she cried about and had become something she simply understood. It did not mean it did not matter. It meant she had learned to carry it differently. Kalen was looking at her with that careful attention. "You're not asking me for sympathy," he said. "No," she said. "What are you asking for?" "Context," she said. "You asked why Derek. Now you know. It's not mysterious. It's a pattern that has happened to a great number of people, and I happen to be one of them, and now I'm working my way out of it." "And what does working your way out look like?" he asked. "After the 30 days? She had not expected him to ask that. Most people, when they helped, thought about the immediate problem. He was thinking past it. "Stability," she said. "My work, on my own terms. My friendships intact. The ability to go home without checking my car first." He nodded, said nothing, but she could see him processing it. Across the restaurant, near the entrance, a woman with a phone was taking a photograph, not of the restaurant or the food. Alara saw her peripheral angle and knew immediately what the woman was photographing. "We're being documented," she said quietly. "Yes," he said. "By morning it will be in 2 or 3 social columns. By the weekend, it will reach Derek's circles, assuming he does not see it himself." She picked up her wine glass and held it naturally, and turned slightly toward Kalen, in a way that was small and easy, and looked, to anyone observing, like the movement of someone who is comfortable with the person they're with. He noticed. He did not look at the camera. He looked at her. "You're good at this," he said, low enough that only she heard it. "I'm good at being observed," she said. "I learned that too." Something crossed his face. Not sympathy, but recognition. The particular recognition of someone who has also learned how to be seen in public without being known. She thought, at that moment, that Kalen Doran was lonelier than he appeared. The thought arrived without her looking for it. She tucked it away. They stayed for 2 hours. When they left, the same woman with the phone tried to get another shot near the entrance. Kalen moved in a way that placed himself very naturally between Alara and the phone, not in a dramatic gesture, just a slight angle shift, so that the photograph caught his profile and Alara's back. She did not comment on it until they were in the car. "You know exactly where the cameras are," she said. "Yes," he said. "Always?" "Since I was 19, he said. She looked at the city moving past the window. "That must get exhausting," she said. He looked out his own window. "You get used to it." She did not believe that exactly. She did not think you got used to it. She thought you got practiced at it, which was not the same thing. But she did not push. They had been here 6 days. There were 24 left. She had plenty of time to learn the difference between what he said and what he meant, and she was not sure yet whether she ought to want to. The car pulled up to the building. The doorman came forward. Kalen got out first and held the door, and she stepped out into the cold air, and they walked through the lobby and into the elevator without speaking, and the elevator rose without speaking, and she went to the guest room and he went to his office, which was where he went every night after 10, and she sat on the bed in the dark for a moment before turning on the lamp. She picked up her camera. She had not meant to photograph the apartment. She had said she would try not to photograph him, but the desk by the window was there, and the city light was particular at this hour, and she pointed the camera at the angle of light on the far wall of the guest room. Just light, just shape, just the way the window made a rectangle of gold on the pale surface, and she took the shot. She looked at it. It was good. She took 3 more, and then put the camera down, and got ready for bed, and thought, as she lay in the dark, about how everything she had thought this would feel like was slightly different from how it actually felt. She had expected to feel like a guest, temporary, careful. She felt careful, but not temporary, and not quite like a guest. She did not know yet what to call the feeling instead. She would figure it out. She was good at figuring things out. It just sometimes took a little longer than she wanted it to. On day 9, Ilara met Callum Doran. and she understood within 4 minutes why Kaylin had described him as immediately suspicious. He arrived at the penthouse without calling ahead, which told her he had a key, and he walked into the living room at 8 in the evening, while Alara was sitting on the floor going through contact sheets with her loupes and a cold cup of tea beside her. She heard the door and looked up, and a man who was clearly Kaylin's brother, though sharper in the face and slightly shorter in height, stopped in the doorway to the living room and looked at her. He was very still for a moment. Then he said, "Huh." "Good evening," she said. "Callum Doran," he said. "Alara Voss," she said. He looked at the contact sheets on the floor, at the cold tea, at her camera on the coffee table, at the loupes in her hand. He looked at her face. He was doing the same inventory Kaylin did, but faster and with more visible conclusions being reached. "Photographer," he said. "Yes. Working right now?" "Reviewing from earlier today. I shot an editorial assignment this afternoon." He walked in and sat down in the armchair across from her, uninvited, as someone who never needed invitations. "How did you meet my brother?" he said. She set the loupes down. "At the Hartwell Grand Gala last month. We were introduced through mutual." "That's the version for public," he said. "I want the actual version." She looked at him. He looked back. He had gray eyes, lighter than Kaylin's, with a directness in them that was less patient than Kaylin's but similarly immovable. "I grabbed his sleeve to escape an uncomfortable situation," she said. "He helped. Here I am." Callum blinked once. "That's a very short story," he said. "The basic facts usually are," she said. He looked at her for another moment. Something shifted in his expression, not softening, exactly. More like a recalibration of what kind of person she was and what kind of conversation was appropriate. "Kaylin hasn't brought anyone here in a long time," he said. "I'm aware that's notable," she said. "Are you?" "Your brother is not a mystery, exactly," she said carefully. "He's just private. Those are different things." Callum's eyes moved across her face with that assessing speed. "Most people think privacy means hiding something," he said. "Most people are wrong," she said. He was quiet for a moment. "What do you want from him?" he said. Blunt, direct, no apology for the bluntness. She looked at him steadily. "Right now? For him to come back from wherever he is, so I don't have to continue this conversation alone." Callum stared at her for 1 second, and then he laughed. It was a genuine laugh, surprised, short, real. "Fair enough," he said. Kaylin appeared from the hallway at that moment, clearly having heard at least part of this exchange, and stopped when he saw his brother. "Callum," he said, nothing in his voice either way. "Your person held her own," Callum said, nodding at Alara. "She generally does," Kaylin said. Alara picked up her loupes and went back to the contact sheets, because she had work to finish, and because sometimes the best thing you can do in a room full of watchful people is simply continue being who you already are. Callum stayed for an hour. They talked about European markets, about a property deal in Amsterdam that was giving their legal team difficulties, about their mother's upcoming birthday, and whether anyone had a plan yet. Alara listened without appearing to listen, and learned several things. That the Doran family communicated in shorthand, built from decades of shared context. That Callum's sharpness was protective rather than aggressive. He watched for threats to things he cared about. And that Kaylin was more relaxed in his brother's company than he was almost anywhere else she had seen him. He did not become talkative, but his shoulders carried less of whatever they usually carried, and once, when Callum said something dry about the Amsterdam lawyers, Kaylin made a sound that was very close to a laugh, and Alara looked up from her contact sheets at exactly the right second and caught it. She did not pick up her camera. She had said she would try not to photograph him. But she kept the image in her mind, with the same careful filing she used for shots she planned to return to, and she thought about it later in the dark of the guest room, and she understood that she was learning him. Not because she was trying to, but because that was what happened when you paid attention to someone in close quarters over a significant amount of time. She wondered if he was learning her the same way. She thought, given how carefully he listened and how little he missed, that he probably was. Noel called on day 11, 2 days after Callum's visit. He did not appear in person. He called on video, and Kaylin took the call in the living room, and Alara was in the kitchen making coffee, and she heard it happening and stayed in the kitchen. But Noel's voice carried. He was louder than Callum, warmer. He had questions that were different from Callum's, not interrogating so much as genuinely curious. He wanted to know where Alara was from, what she photographed, what her work looked like. He asked Kaylin if he had seen her work, and Kaylin said yes. Is she good? Noel asked. A pause. She is very good, Kaylin said. Alara stood in the kitchen with both hands around her coffee cup and did not move. It was 4 words. They were simple and quiet, and they were not said with any intention of being overheard. They were said the way people say true things when they are not performing, plainly, because the truth is plain. She went back to her room and sat at her desk, and opened her laptop, and did not work for approximately 15 minutes. Then she worked. On day 12, she found him on the terrace at 2 in the morning. She had gotten up for water, and seen the terrace door slightly open and the cold air coming in, and she had pulled on a sweatshirt and looked out, and there he was, standing at the railing, looking at the river below, in the way that someone stands when they are not seeing what they are looking at. She did not ask if he was okay. She had known enough people to know that question was rarely useful. She went out and stood beside him. She put her arms on the railing. She looked at the river. He did not tell her to go back inside. He did not speak. Neither did she. The city was quiet at 2 in the morning, in the way that cities got quiet, not silent, but lower. The daytime hum reduced to its nighttime form, the traffic sparse, the lights constant. The river moved below them with that particular slow patience of water that has no agenda. She stood there for 20 minutes. He stood there too. At no point did either of them say a single word. At some point she went back inside. She got her glass of water and went back to bed. In the morning at the coffee counter he said, "Thank you," without specifying for what. She said, "Any time," without asking for what. They drank their coffee, and the morning happened, and neither of them spoke about the terrace, or the 2 in the morning, or the 20 minutes of shared wordless company that had, without either of them choosing it, become the most honest conversation they had yet managed. The day the news broke was day 14. She found out at 7 in the morning when Zoe texted her, "Alara, why is your face on the internet?" She found the coverage herself. There were 4 items. 2 social columns with the gala photograph, which was good. They were from the first dinner at Alderton's, and both were blurry enough from distance that her face was not clearly visible. 1 tabloid piece titled, "Who is the Alpha King's Mystery Companion?" with a cleaner photo she had not known was taken, and a feature piece in a business publication that referenced Kaylin Doran's recently visible personal life, in a paragraph at the end of a larger article about Doran Capital's European expansion. She sat with her coffee and read them all carefully. Then she texted Zoe back, "I'll explain everything. I'm fine. Don't talk to anyone." Zoe sent back, "When did your life become a movie?" She was about to put the phone down when it rang. Not Zoe. A number she did not recognize. She looked at it for a second, then answered. "Alara Voss?" A woman's voice, clear, measured, unhurried. "Yes," she said. "This is Mara Doran," the voice said. "I believe we should meet." The lunch with Mara Doran happened 2 days later, on a Tuesday, at a restaurant Mara had chosen herself, a small, quiet Italian place in Lincoln Park that had been there for 30 years, and looked it, in the best possible way. Dark wood, good wine, and the smell of something cooking that had been cooking since morning. Mara was 63 years old, and she looked like the kind of woman who had always known exactly who she was. She was not dressed expensively. She was dressed precisely. There was a difference, and Alara noticed it immediately. Her hair was dark with threads of silver, and cut in a way that was simple and deliberate. She was sitting at the table when Alara arrived, already there, not checking a phone. She stood when Alara approached. She had dark eyes like both her sons, though hers had more visible history in them. "Alara," she said. "Mrs. Doran," Alara said. "Mara," she said. "Sit down." They sat. A waiter appeared, and Mara ordered water and the pasta she always ordered, without looking at the menu, and Alara ordered the same, and the waiter left. "I want to ask you something direct," Mara said, "and I want you to answer me directly. Can you do that?" "Yes," Alara said. "What do you want from my son?" The same question Callum had asked. but with more weight behind it. Not because Mara was threatening, she was not, but because Mara asked it with the particular, serious focus of someone for whom the answer genuinely mattered, and who would know if the answer was not honest. I want 30 days of protection from a person who has made my life unsafe, Ilara said, and at the end of those 30 days, I want my life back. Mara looked at her. And Kaylin, she said, what does he get from this? A simplified problem. The man who is my problem intersects with people your son does business with. My situation was a variable he chose to address. Mara was quiet for a moment. You describe him very practically. That is how he describes himself, Ilara said. Something moved in Mara's eyes. Not surprise. Something quieter. Yes, she said. He does. The food came. They ate. And then Mara, who had been watching Ilara with the attention of someone composing a picture in their mind, said something Ilara did not expect. He brought you to the terrace, didn't he, at night? Ilara looked up. He goes there when he cannot sleep, Mara said. He has, since his father died. He does not bring people. He has not brought anyone. He goes alone. Ilara set down her fork. I went out, she said carefully. I found him there. He did not bring me. Mara looked at her steadily. He did not send you back. There was nothing to say to that. It was true, and they both knew it. He is not an easy person to know, Mara said. He is honest, and he is loyal, and he is more generous than he appears, but he keeps people at a very particular distance, and he has kept that distance for a very long time, and I say this, not to discourage you, but because you have the eyes of someone who pays close attention, and I want you to be paying attention to the right things. Ilara looked at her. What are the right things? That distance is not preference, Mara said. It is protection. He learned it. She said nothing more about that. She picked up her fork. Ilara thought about this for a moment. I am only here for 30 days, she said. I know that, Mara said. So whatever you are telling me, I am telling you because you will be gone in 30 days, Mara said, simply. And whatever you see in that time, I want you to see it accurately. Ilara looked at this woman, this smart, contained, observant woman who had raised the man she was currently learning, and understood that Mara was not warning her off. She was asking her to pay attention. She was asking her to see her son the way he deserved to be seen. Okay, Ilara said. Mara nodded once. They finished the meal. When they left the restaurant, Mara put on her coat and looked at Ilara one more time. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? Something easier, Mara said. Something less. She paused. I was wrong. She left. Ilara stood on the sidewalk in the cold November air and felt the weight of that sentence. Something less. She went back to the penthouse and found Kaylin at his desk, and she sat across from him and told him about the lunch without softening anything. He listened without interrupting. When she was done, he was quiet for a moment. She called you, he said. Not quite a question. She wanted to see who I was. And what did she see? Ilara thought about how to answer this. She thought about the way Mara had looked at her across that table, and the way she had said those last words, and what they had meant. I think, she said carefully, that she saw someone she didn't expect. Kaylin looked at the desk. He was quiet for a long moment. She's right, usually, he said, about people. I know, Ilara said. She seems like a woman who generally is. He looked up at her. His expression was not readable in the usual way, but there was something in it that was different from the careful, managed steadiness he usually presented, something that was a degree closer to the surface. What did she tell you? He said. About me. That the distance is protection, she said. That you learned it. He was very still. She had no right to tell you that, he said. It was not angry, just quiet. She had every right, Ilara said. She's your mother, and she loves you, and she wanted me to understand something. She paused. I'm not going to use it against you, Kaylin. That's not what I do. He looked at her for a long time. I know, he said. He went back to his work. She went back to hers. The afternoon moved on. But something had changed in the room, in a way that was hard to name. The air between them had shifted by a small, measurable amount. Not warmer exactly, but less separate. like two objects that have been near each other long enough that the space between them is no longer quite empty. She noticed it. She thought he probably noticed it too. She photographed the light on the desk that evening. Just the light, not him. But the light was his, in a way that she understood. Elara was carrying her equipment bag down the main hallway of the penthouse on day 17, when her phone rang, and the name on the screen made her stop walking. It was not Derek. It was her client, Owen Briggs, who ran a small but respected magazine that had given her 3 cover assignments in the past 2 years. Owen Briggs, who had called her last week to confirm her upcoming feature shoot and told her everything was fine. She answered. "Elara," Owen said. His voice was different from usual. Careful. "Owen," she said. "What's going on?" A pause. "I wanted to call you directly, because I think you deserve that." She put her bag down on the floor and leaned against the wall. "Tell me," she said. "I got a call this morning," he said. "From Derek Hale. He introduced himself as your previous partner," he said. Owen paused, and she could hear him choosing words. "He said some things about your professionalism. About your reliability. He implied there had been some incident at an event you photographed last year that had gone unreported." She closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then she opened them. "That's not true," she said. Her voice was steady. "I know that," Owen said quickly. "I've worked with you for 2 years. I know your work, and I know your character." I told him that. Another pause. "But Elara, he also called the Harrow Agency, and the Morrison Group, and 2 private clients that I know of, possibly more." She was quiet. "He's been busy," she said. "Are you all right?" Owen said. "I mean actually, are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said. "I'm dealing with it." She paused. "I'm sorry you were dragged into this." "Don't apologize to me," Owen said firmly. "The shoot is still on. You're still my photographer. I wanted you to know, because you should be aware of what's happening." "Thank you, Owen. Call me if you need anything," he said. "I mean that." She thanked him again, and ended the call, and stood in the hallway for a moment. Derek had been busy. She had known he would not simply accept what the visible arrangement was telling him. She had known that. Derek did not accept things. He applied pressure until things changed shape, and when they did not change shape, he applied more pressure. She had lived inside that pattern for 2 years. She knew exactly how it worked. She picked up her bag and walked to Kalen's office. The door was open. He was at his desk on a call. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, and something in his face shifted immediately. A reading of hers. He said into the phone, "I'll call you back," and ended the call without waiting for a response. "Derek," she said. He stood up. She told him everything Owen had said. She kept her voice even and informational because she did not want to be emotional about this in front of him, and she also did not want to be the kind of person who fell apart when something went wrong. She told him about Owen, the Harrow Agency, the Morrison Group, the unknown private clients. Kalen listened without interrupting. When she finished, he did not say that he was sorry, which she appreciated, because she did not need sympathy right now. He went to his desk and picked up his phone. "I'm going to make some calls," he said. "Kalen. He has crossed a professional line that makes this actionable," he said. He was calm, completely calm, in the way that was more serious than anger would have been. "What he's doing now is targeted damage to your livelihood. That is not personal anymore. That is something else." She looked at him. "What kind of calls?" she said. He held her gaze. "The kind that are appropriate." She wanted to ask more. She was the kind of person who needed to understand what was happening in order to feel okay about it. But she also understood, looking at him, that he was not going to give her something he didn't yet have, and that he was completely in control of whatever he was about to do, and that asking him to slow down so she could feel better was not something she was willing to do. "All right," she said. "One thing," he said. She waited. "This arrangement was supposed to be quiet," he said. "What I'm about to do will be less quiet." "You mean it will draw attention?" "It will clarify, very clearly, that you are under my protection, which is what we said, but it will also make that more visible than a few dinner photographs." She thought about this. She thought about Owen Briggs calling to warn her. She thought about the flower on her car, and the calls at 2 in the morning, and the 3 months before the gala when she had spent every morning checking her surroundings before she left the house. "Do what you need to do," she said. He nodded once. He looked at her for a second longer, and there was something in the look, something that was not the practical, arranged steadiness of their arrangement, but something nearer, and then he looked at his phone and started making calls. She went back to the hallway. She picked up her bag. She went to her room and sat at her desk and called Zoe. Zoe answered on the first ring, which she always did. "He went after my clients," Ilara said. "Oh, that piece of work," Zoe said, with a feeling in her voice that warmed Ilara more than she could express. "What do you need? Tell me what you need." "Nothing right now," Ilara said. "I just needed to say it out loud to someone who knows me." "I'm right here," Zoe said. "I know," Ilara said. She sat on the phone with Zoe for 20 minutes without saying much. Zoe talked about her day, about the dinner she was making, about the new cat her upstairs neighbor had gotten that was apparently causing a great deal of controversy in the building. It was ordinary and warm, and exactly what Ilara needed, which was the kind of ground-level reality that reminded her that her life existed outside of whatever this situation was, and that it would be there when the situation ended. When she hung up, she washed her face and went to the kitchen and made tea, because making tea was something to do with her hands. Kalen appeared an hour later. He stood in the kitchen doorway. "It's handled," he said. She looked at him. "What does that mean?" "Derek Hale is currently being reviewed for financial irregularities that have been of interest to several parties for some time," he said. "The interest existed before this evening. I simply indicated that the timing for acting on that interest might be appropriate." She set down her cup. "You didn't create the problem." "No," he said. "I moved the schedule." She looked at him carefully. "Is that legal?" "Yes," he said simply. She turned this over in her mind. Derek had been making problems for other people long before he made problems for her. She had always suspected that, because people like Derek always were. What Kalen had done was not fabricate something. He had pointed a light at something that was already there. "The clients he called," she said. "Will that?" "I've made it clear," he said, "that what Derek told them was false, and that any damage to your professional reputation will have a response." He paused. "Owen Briggs already called back. The shoot is still on." She stared at him. "You called Owen?" "I had my office call Owen," he said. "And the Harrow Agency. And the Morrison Group." She did not know what to say. She was not, in general, a person who lost words. She was finding herself in this arrangement more often in that state than she could account for. "You didn't have to do that," she said. He looked at her steadily. "It was within the arrangement," he said. "No, it wasn't," she said quietly. The arrangement was protection in the social sense. This went further. He was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said. "It was not a defense. It was just an acknowledgement." She looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. He went back toward his office. At the doorway he stopped. "I looked up your work," he said, without turning around. She waited. "You won the Castleton Award 2 years ago," he said. "The series on the overnight workers in Chicago. The cleaning staff, the nurses, the delivery drivers, the people who keep the city moving while everyone else is asleep." She was very still. "I remember that series," he said. "I didn't know who took those photographs until tonight." He walked back to his office. She stood in the kitchen with her tea going cold, and thought about the fact that he had looked up her work tonight, not to check her credentials, not for any practical purpose related to the arrangement, but because Derek had attacked her professional reputation, and Kalen had wanted to see it for himself, and what he had found had apparently mattered enough to mention. She thought about the photograph she had not yet taken, the one she kept finding in her mind, him on the terrace, 2 in the morning, the city below, the particular openness of someone who does not know they are being seen. She went and got her camera. She did not take the photograph, but she held the camera for a long time, the way you hold something you are not yet ready to put down. On day 20, the weekend arrived with a quietness that felt different from the weekday quiet. There were no calls, no appearances, no events. Kalen had told her at the beginning of the week that the weekend was unscheduled, and she had taken that to mean she should stay out of his way, which she had been planning to do anyway. Instead, she found him in the kitchen at 9 in the morning, not dressed for the office, in a plain dark sweater and what appeared to be the most ordinary trousers he owned, reading a physical newspaper. An actual newspaper, printed on paper, which she had not seen anyone under 60 read in some time. She stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at this. He looked up. "Coffee's made," he said. She came in and poured herself a cup. She did not go back to her room. She sat down across from him at the counter island. He went back to his newspaper. She wrapped her hands around her cup. "You read an actual newspaper," she said. "Yes," he said. "Why?" He folded it down slightly. "I like the way the paper feels," he said. "And I read faster when things aren't on a screen." She considered this. "What section?" "Business first," he said. "Then world news. Then nothing." "Then nothing?" "I stop at the editorial section," he said. "People's opinions about news are not news." She almost smiled. "That's a strong position." "It is also consistent," he said, and went back to reading. She drank her coffee. After a few minutes she said, "I want to go to the lakefront today. To shoot. I haven't been out properly in a week, and I'm starting to lose it." He looked up. "I'll arrange someone to go with you." "I don't want someone to go with me," she said. "Derek's situation is being handled. You said it yourself, the urgency is reduced." He looked at her. "He's not the kind of person who gives up cleanly," Kaylin said. "I know that," she said. "But I've been a contained, cautious person for 2 years because of him, and I am tired of it. I want to walk along the lake and take pictures of the way the light falls on the water in November, and I want to do that alone." He looked at her for a moment. His expression did something that she was getting better at reading. A small shift in the area around his eyes, a slight loosening around the jaw. Not emotion, but something near it. "I'll go with you," he said. She blinked. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. "I want to." She looked at him. He was already folding his newspaper. They went to the lakefront at 10:30. The day was cold and the sky was that particular November white that made everything look like a photograph already. Slightly overexposed at the edges, the light diffused and clean and good. The lake was dark gray and moving, and there were almost no people, which made it feel like the city had given them a gift. She walked and she shot. She was not performing. She was not on assignment. She just shot what she saw, the way she had learned to do before she had an assignment to shoot for, or a client to please. The way she had done when she was 22 with a second-hand camera and $400, and the absolute conviction that light falling on things was worth paying attention to. A seagull on a piling, its feathers moving in the wind. Ice beginning to form at the edge of a concrete step. A red wool hat someone had left draped over a bench. The water moving in its gray, undecided way. She photographed all of it and more, and she moved fast and freely, and forgot, for long stretches, that she was not alone. Kaylin walked with her at an easy pace, his hands in his coat pockets, saying nothing. He was not a person who narrated things, and she was not a person who needed narration while she was working. And so they moved together along the lake path, in a silence that was neither awkward nor performative. It was simply two people who had gotten comfortable enough with each other that being in the same space did not require justification. At one point she stopped and turned and looked back the way they had come, at the city rising behind them, the buildings sharp against the white sky, and she lifted her camera and took the shot before she had fully decided to, and then she looked at the screen. It was a good shot. The city, the lake's edge, the bench with the red hat. And in the corner of the frame, slightly blurred by depth of field but present and unmistakable, Kaylin Doran, hands in pockets, looking at the water. She had not planned it. She had not been thinking about him when she lifted the camera, but he was there. She looked at the image for a moment, then she put the camera down. "Did you photograph me?" he said. He had not turned around. He was still looking at the water. "Accidentally," she said. He turned then. He looked at her. She showed him the screen. He looked at the image for a longer time than she expected. His expression was quiet and complicated, and she could not name everything in it. "Keep it," he said. "I was going to," she said. "It's a good photograph." "Yes," he said. Then, a beat later, "You can't see my face." "I know," she said. "That's what makes it work. It's just a person. It could be anyone standing at the lake in November, but it's also very specifically you." He looked at her. "How can it be both?" That's the whole job, she said. That's what I try to do. Specific and universal at the same time. This one moment that also somehow means something bigger. He was quiet for a moment. Does it always work? He said. No, she said honestly. Most of the time it's just a photograph, but sometimes, she looked at the screen again. Sometimes you get lucky, and the image knows something you don't yet. He looked at the screen for another second. Then he looked back at the water. I haven't been out here in years, he said. She looked at him. To the lakefront? In general, he said. Out. Without a reason. He paused. Without somewhere to be or someone to meet or something to deal with. She looked at his profile against the winter sky. How does it feel? She asked. He thought about it. She liked that he thought about it instead of giving her the easy answer. Strange, he said, and then not strange. She nodded. She understood that. The way things that have been absent from your life for long enough feel foreign when they return, and then, quickly, feel like they were never gone. They walked for another hour. On the way back he bought coffee from a cart run by a man named Gary who apparently knew him, which she found delightful, and which she could tell he was slightly embarrassed by, though he would never say so. The coffee was too sweet and not very good, and she drank all of it. In the car on the way back, she went through the morning shots on her camera screen. He sat beside her and did not ask to see them, but when she got to one that she paused on, a shot of the ice at the lake's edge, the light catching it in a specific way, he said quietly, that one. She looked at it. You like it? It looks like the city in winter feels, he said. She looked at him. What does the city in winter feel like? She said. He thought about it again. Like something waiting, he said. Not unhappily, just patient. She looked back at the photograph. She thought about what he had said. She thought he was right, and she also thought that was probably the most personal thing he had said to her in 20 days, and she was very careful not to make anything of it in the moment, because she understood that personal things said in passing were fragile, and that the wrong response could close a door. I like that, she said simply. He nodded and looked out the window. They got back to the building and rode up in the elevator, in the same quiet they had carried all morning, and she went to her room and downloaded the morning's images and spent the afternoon editing. She edited the lakefront shot last, the one with him in the corner, blurred, at the water's edge. She looked at it for a long time. Something waiting, he had said, not unhappily. She saved it to her private folder, the one she had not added to in 4 months, and then had, the one that held the things that mattered to her for reasons beyond the professional. She put the laptop to sleep. She sat in the chair by the window as the afternoon light changed. 10 days left. She had not been counting. She had been, she realized, very deliberately not counting. She had been treating each day as the day itself, rather than as a number in a sequence with a fixed endpoint. She thought about that. She thought about what it meant that she had stopped counting. She did not let herself think further than that. Not yet. There was still time. There were still 10 days. She picked up her camera and went to the window and photographed the light changing on the city below, and she did not let herself think about anything except the light. There were 7 days left when Alara found the photographs. Not her photographs. His. She had been looking for a power cable for her laptop charger, the adapter that connected to the surge protector she had set up at the guest room desk, and she had gone looking in the storage room off the hallway, because that was where she had seen Kaylin put a box of miscellaneous cables during her first week. The storage room was orderly, like everything in the apartment, with labeled shelves and clear bins. She found the cable quickly. But on her way out, she saw the box on the bottom shelf. It was not labeled. Everything else was labeled. This was the only unlabeled box in the room. She would not have looked. She was not a person who went through other people's things. But the box was slightly open at the top, and what she could see from where she stood was the edge of a printed photograph, slightly glossy, clearly not a professional print, more like something developed from a home machine or a 1-hour service. She looked at it for a moment. She put the cable under her arm and bent down and opened the box just enough to see. There were photographs inside, a lot of them, not in albums, not organized, just loose and stacked and slightly worn at the edges. She could see from the top few that they were old, the kind of photograph that had a particular color palette that placed them 15 or 20 years ago. She saw a boy who was clearly Kalen, maybe 12 or 13, at the edge of what looked like a lake. Not this lake. Somewhere with trees around it. He was looking at something off camera, with an expression she recognized. The same careful attention he brought to everything, but younger and less guarded. Open in a way she had not seen him in person. She stood up. She put the box back exactly as she had found it, and left the storage room and shut the door behind her. She went to her room and plugged in her laptop, and sat down, and did not work. She thought about the boy at the lake. She thought about Mara saying the distance was protection, that he had learned it. She thought about the apartment with no photographs on the walls, no personal items on the surfaces, nothing that said a person lived here beyond the books, and the coffee machine, and the one worn philosophy text on the shelf. And a box in a storage room with every personal photograph he owned, kept out of sight, lid slightly open, as though someone had looked at them recently and not quite managed to close the box all the way. She sat with that for a long time. That evening she came out to the living room at 8, which was when they usually both ended up in the same space, before going their separate ways for the evening. He was at the end of the couch reading something on a tablet. She sat on the other end and opened her laptop. After a few minutes he looked up. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm usually quiet," she said. "Different kind of quiet," he said. She looked at him. His ability to notice things was sometimes inconvenient. "I found the box in the storage room," she said. "I was looking for a cable. I saw a photograph and I looked, and then I stopped. I wanted to tell you." He was very still. "All right," he said. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have." "You didn't go through it," he said. "No." "Then you didn't do anything wrong," he said. His voice was level. "I still wanted to tell you," she said. He looked at the tablet in his hands. He was quiet for a moment. "They're from before," he said. "Before my father died. We used to go to a lake in Minnesota every summer. My mother, my father, Callum, Noel, and me." He paused. "After he died, my mother boxed everything up. She said it was too much to see every day. Eventually, the box came to me." She was quiet. "And you keep it," she said. "Yes. But not where you can see it." He looked at the tablet. "The problem with seeing them," he said, "is that I remember how things felt before I understood what they would become." He paused. "I was 12 in those photographs. My father was 41. I didn't know yet what 41 was. I didn't know that you could be 41 and be gone the next year." She did not say she was sorry. She did not say she understood. She sat with it for a moment instead. "What was he like?" she said. Kalen looked at the tablet for a long moment, then he set it down. "He was the kind of person," he said slowly, "who made you feel like whatever you were doing was the most important thing in the room. He listened the way." He stopped. "The way you listen," he said. She looked at him. "Like you mean it," he said. "Like what you're hearing matters." She did not know what to say to that. She was not sure she was supposed to say anything. He picked up his tablet again. He did not read it. He just held it. "The photographs are good," she said quietly. "What I saw. The one with you at the lake. It was a good moment." He looked at the tablet. "Yes," he said. "It was." They sat on either end of the couch and did not talk for a while, and the not talking was different from the earlier not talkings. It had more in it. It had the weight of things that had been said and things that had not been said, and it was not uncomfortable. It was simply the particular fullness of a space that holds more than it used to. At 10 she went to her room. She sat at her desk and thought about photographs, about what photographs do. Not what they show, but what they do. How they stop time in a way that is not natural. How they make the past present in a way that is sometimes wonderful and sometimes unbearable. How the same image can mean something entirely different depending on when you look at it. She thought about the lakefront shot, him in the corner, blurred, at the water's edge. She thought about the boy at the lake in Minnesota, 12 years old, looking at something off camera with careful attention. She thought about how 23 days of knowing a person could make you feel like you understood something essential about them, and whether that feeling was real, or whether it was the particular illusion created by proximity and time. She opened her laptop. She went to the folder with the lakefront shot. She looked at it. She thought, 7 days. She thought, that is not very long. She thought, I have not been counting. And now I am counting. And I should think about what that means. She closed the laptop and went to bed, and lay in the dark, and listened to the city outside, and did not let herself think about any of it, because there were 7 days left, and she was not yet ready to face what she was beginning to understand. The next morning she got up early and made coffee before he was awake. She stood at the window with her cup, and looked at the river in the gray early morning, and she thought, quietly and honestly, that she had made a significant error in her thinking about this arrangement. She had thought 30 days was a practical number, enough time for a situation to resolve, not enough time for anything else to develop. She had been wrong about the second part. She did not know yet what to do with being wrong. She was still working on it. The coffee was very good, the way it always was when she made it here, in this kitchen, in this building, with this view. She drank it slowly, and waited for the morning to tell her something useful. The morning told her nothing useful, but the evening did. It was day 25, and Kalen had come home from a meeting at 6 with something different in his expression. A quietness that was more weighted than his usual quietness. A tension in the line of his shoulders that she had learned to read over the past weeks. She did not ask immediately. She went on with what she had been doing, which was editing a set of portraits she had shot 2 days ago for a personal project she had started here. Not client work, just her own work. The kind she had stopped making time for when Derek had slowly eroded her confidence in the value of it. At 8, she put the kettle on for tea, and he came to the kitchen and stood at the far counter, and she thought, now. What happened today? She said. He looked at the counter. The Amsterdam deal fell through, he said. 6 months of work. The other party found a better arrangement. He paused. It's business. These things happen. But, she said. He looked up. You're not telling me the business part is what's bothering you, she said. You're too experienced for one deal to put that look on your face. He was quiet for a moment. Callum managed this one, he said. He worked harder on it than I've seen him work on anything in years. He put his reputation into it. He stopped. He doesn't fail often. When he does, he carries it differently than I do. What do you mean? She said. I can let things go, he said. Not everything, but most things. I have learned how. Callum. He stopped again. He holds things. He holds them for a long time. He will hold this. She poured the tea and pushed a cup across the counter to him, without asking if he wanted it. Are you worried about him? She said. Yes, he said. She looked at him. Have you told him that? He looked at his tea. We don't really, he started. I know, she said. You do the shorthand. You talk about work and logistics and family arrangements, and you don't always. She paused. Have you considered just calling him and saying you're worried about him? He looked at her. The expression on his face was the particular expression of a person being offered something simple that has somehow never occurred to them. It's not something I know, she said again. I'm not criticizing. I'm asking whether you might want to. He was quiet for a moment. He picked up the tea. I'll call him, he said. You should, she said. Not insistently, just with the simple confidence of someone who understood that the thing being suggested was right. She went back to her editing. He made the call in his office, and she did not hear the conversation. But when he came back out 40 minutes later, the line of his shoulders was different. Still tired, but without the specific weight that had been there before. He stood in the doorway of the living room. He's all right, he said, angry, but all right. Good, she said. He looked at her. Thank you, he said. I didn't do anything. You made me think of something simple, he said. That is not nothing. She looked at her screen. She saved the file she was working on. You do that, he said. She looked up. Make simple things clear, he said. Things that should be obvious but somehow aren't, until you say them. He paused. It's a useful quality. It's just paying attention, she said. It's more than that, he said. He did not elaborate. He went to the kitchen, and she heard him making himself something to eat, and she went back to her work. But she was not really working. She was thinking about what he had said and what it meant that he had said it. 5 days. She was counting now, and she could not stop. The next morning she developed the film she had been putting off developing. She had been shooting digital for the past weeks, partly for convenience, but she had brought one film camera, and had been using it in quiet moments. Shots she was not sure about, experiments, things she was not yet ready to look at on a screen, because a screen made images immediate, and she was not always ready for immediacy. She set up in the guest bathroom. It was not a dark room, but she had a portable developing kit she traveled with, and the bathroom could be made dark enough, and she had done this in worse conditions. She worked for 2 hours. She was focused and careful, and the smell of the chemicals and the feel of the process, the particular, tactile, chemical patience of film, was deeply familiar and deeply calming. She had just hung the developed strip to dry, when there was a knock on the bathroom door. "Yes," she said. "I smelled something," Kaylin said through the door. "Is everything all right?" "Developing film," she said. "Sorry. The fixer has a particular smell. I should have warned you." A pause. "Can I see?" She looked at the strip hanging in the dark bathroom. She thought about what was on it. "Give it an hour to dry," she said. An hour later, she brought the strip to the living room and held it up to the window light. She had a small loupe. She looked through the loupe. She went through the images slowly. And she stopped on one. It was the terrace. Shot from the doorway, 2 in the morning. The city below. A figure at the railing. Not his face, his back and his profile. The line of his shoulders. The city light on his hair. The river far below. She had not known she was going to take it. She must have picked up the film camera in the hallway that night, moving toward the door on instinct. She did not remember doing it. She looked at it for a long moment. Kaylin was behind her. She had not heard him come in, but she knew he was there. She handed him the loupe without turning around. "Third from the left," she said. She heard him look at it. She did not hear him speak for a long moment. "You took this," he said. "Yes," she said. "That night. I don't think I meant to." Another silence. "You don't have to keep it," she said, "if you'd rather." "I want to keep it," he said. She turned around. He was looking at the negative with the loupe, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. Not unguarded in a vulnerable way, just open. As if something had been removed from in front of his face that had been there for a long time. "I've never liked being photographed," he said. "I know," she said. "I don't know why this is different," he said. She did know. She thought she knew. But she did not say it, because some things you understand before the other person is ready to hear them, and the gap between those two timings required patience. "I'll make you a print," she said. "I'd like that," he said. He handed the loupe back. He went to his desk. She stayed at the window, and looked out at the city, and thought about 4 days, and everything that 4 days meant, and did not mean, and might not. She picked up her camera. She did not take any photographs. She just held it, the way she always held it when she was thinking about something she was not yet ready to put into words, because words were someone else's medium, and she had never been fully at home in them, and the camera was the thing that let her say what she meant, without having to know how to say it. 4 days. She held the camera, and the city moved below her, and 4 days was not enough, and also, it was what she had. She left on a Tuesday. The 30 days ended on a Tuesday, which felt arbitrary, and also entirely appropriate, because endings were often arbitrary and entirely appropriate at the same time. She had packed the night before, not because she needed to, but because she needed to do something with her hands, and packing was organized and tactile, and left no room for the kind of thinking she was trying not to do. The guest room looked exactly as it had on the first night. The white sheets, the east-facing window, the view of the city. She had not left any marks on it, which she thought was both accurate and slightly sad in a way she chose not to examine. She carried her bags to the hall at 8 in the morning. Kaylin was already up. Of course he was. He was always up by 5:30. He was standing in the kitchen with his coffee and his folded newspaper, and he looked at her bags, and then at her face with that careful attention, and she looked back at him with the same care. "The car is coming at 9, he said. "I know," she said. She poured herself coffee and stood at the counter, and they did what they had been doing for 30 days, which was exist in the same space, with their coffee and their respective morning silences. And she thought, "I will not have this tomorrow morning. I will have the coffee shop below my apartment, the smell of espresso, the ordinary sound of my own life resuming." She thought, that is a good thing. She also thought, that is not all of what it is. "How's Owen?" Kaylin said. "He's fine," she said. "The shoot is next week. He's been very kind about everything." "Good. Derek's situation?" "Being managed," Kaylin said. "His financial review will take months. He's occupied." A pause. "He won't bother you, not because he's changed, he hasn't, but because he has more pressing concerns now." She nodded. She looked at her coffee cup. "And I should be safe," she said, "going home." "Yes," he said, "you should be." She nodded again. She was nodding because it was the thing to do, because it was a response to what he was saying, because she was a person who responded appropriately, and she was trying to be that person right now, and it was requiring more effort than it usually did. She looked up. He was looking at her. "I need to go," she said. "I know," he said. She carried her bags to the door. She set them down. She turned around. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, both hands around his coffee cup, in the dark sweater and the ordinary trousers, and he looked exactly like himself, which was the problem. He looked exactly and completely like himself, not like a person she had been assigned to for 30 days, but like a person she had learned, carefully and specifically, and in the way she learned things she cared about. She thought about the terrace at 2 in the morning, the lakefront on a Sunday, the sound of him on the phone with Callum, and the way his shoulders had changed after, the box in the storage room, the photograph of the boy at the lake, and what he had said about his father, and the 4 words, "She is very good," said plainly to his brother on a video call because they were simply true. She thought about how she had come to this building, as a person who was very good at being small, and how 30 days of being seen by someone who did not ask her to be small had made her feel the dimensions of herself differently. She opened her mouth. "Kaylin," she said. He looked at her. He had the expression she had come to understand as his version of preparation, a particular stillness that meant he was braced for something, not defensively, just with the careful steadiness of someone who has learned to meet things directly. She thought, "Tell him. Tell him what you understand. Tell him that this arrangement turned into something else, and that you know it did, and that you think he knows it did, and that you are leaving anyway, because you are not the kind of person who stays somewhere she has not been truly asked to stay." She thought, "But I want to be asked." She thought, "Ask me." She thought, "He won't. Not because he doesn't want to. Because he is Kaylin Doran, and he learned the distance, and the distance is protection, and asking is not yet something he knows how to do without it costing him more than he can see clearly right now." She looked at him for one more second. "Thank you," she said, "for all of it." "Of course," he said. His voice was even. She picked up her bags. "Take care of yourself," she said. "You too," he said. She left. The elevator descended, and the lobby opened around her, and the doorman held the door, and the cold November morning hit her face, and the car was at the curb, and she got in, and the driver took her bags, and she sat in the back seat, and the car pulled into traffic. She looked straight ahead. She did not look back at the building. She was the kind of person who did not look back at buildings once she had left them, because looking back served no practical purpose and occasionally made things harder. She did not look back. The city moved past the windows. The river flashed below the bridge. The neighborhoods changed as they went north, the skyline receding behind her, her apartment coming closer, the coffee shop, the smell of her own mornings, her own things in her own space. She sat with her hands in her lap and looked at the city and thought about nothing in particular, because thinking in particular required more precision than she had right now. She was fine. She was going home. The situation was resolved. She had her work and her life, and Zoe and Owen and the shoot next week, and 30 days had been what she needed, and now it was over, and she was fine. She was fine. The car stopped at her building on the north side. The driver carried her bags to the door. She thanked him and took her key from her pocket and unlocked the door and climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor and let herself in. The apartment smelled like her, like the particular combination of coffee and photography chemicals and the cedar she kept in the closets that was very specifically her. It was familiar and right, and everything was exactly where she had left it. Her books on the shelves, her prints on the walls, her developing trays stacked neatly by the bathroom. She set her bags down. She stood in the middle of her own apartment and looked around at her own life. And for one unguarded moment she thought, "It is very quiet here." And then she thought, "It has always been quiet here. And I have always been fine with that. And I will be fine with it now." She made tea. She sat by the window. The coffee shop below began to fill up with the morning crowd. She could hear the low, familiar hum of it, the espresso machine, the murmur of people ordering, the ordinary sound of a Tuesday. She was home. She picked up her camera and photographed the light coming through her own window, and the teacup on the sill, and the street below. She looked at the images on the screen. She had no idea whether they were good. She had no idea whether anything she did in the next little while would feel exactly right, or whether she would need some time before it did. That was acceptable. She had gotten through harder things than this. She put the camera down and drank her tea, and watched the street, and waited for her life to tell her what came next. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday evening in late November, the Callaway Gallery on Michigan Avenue opened an exhibition with no listed artist name. The exhibition was called Unguarded. It ran for one night only, by appointment, which was unusual for the Callaway, which generally ran shows for 6 to 8 weeks. When art journalists asked about the arrangement, the gallery director said only that the artist had requested it. When they asked about the artist, the gallery director gave no name. The exhibition consisted of 23 photographs, all printed large, framed simply, hung with deliberate spacing on white walls. The lighting was low and specific, and the gallery had done the work of people who understood what they were presenting. The photographs were of a city in winter, streets at night, the lake on a white sky morning, light on surfaces, rooms and windows, and the particular geometries of inhabited private spaces. A figure in the corner of a lakefront shot, blurred and close enough to feel present without being exposed. Ice at the edge of a concrete step. A red hat on a bench. And one, a figure at a terrace railing at night, viewed from a doorway, the city below, the light particular and quiet, the man's back turned and his profile barely visible. A person looking out at something that was not the photographer, so completely himself in that moment that the image seemed less like a document than a fact. That one sold in the first 7 minutes. By the time the gallery closed at 10, every image had sold. Every one except the terrace photograph, which had already been sold to a single buyer who had purchased it at 8:32 in the evening, 2 minutes after the gallery opened, and who had also bought the other 22 in the following 45 minutes, working methodically and without apparent hesitation from piece to piece, pausing at each one in the way that a person pauses at something they recognize. The buyer did not give his name at the gallery desk. He paid through a numbered account. The gallery director, who knew exactly who he was, said nothing, because she had been asked not to. He stood in front of the terrace photograph for a long time at the end of the evening, when the other scheduled appointments had come and gone, and the space was empty except for him and the images. There was a note pinned beside it. Small card, handwritten, no signature. He read it. He stood in front of the photograph and the note for 3 minutes and 40 seconds by the clock on the gallery's far wall. Then he took his phone from his pocket. She picked up on the second ring. "Kaylin," she said. He did not say her name. He said, "I'm at the gallery." A brief silence. "I know," she said. "Every print," he said. "I know," she said again. "I would have," he started, and stopped, and started again. "If you had told me you were showing this." "I didn't want you to know beforehand," she said. "I needed to show it without telling you first. I needed you to walk in and see it the way anyone else would. Without," she paused, "without the arrangement being the context." He understood what she meant. He had understood most things she said, he realized, from fairly early on, even when she had not fully said them. "The note," he said. "Yes," she said. He looked at the card. She had written, "I see you. I always did." He held the phone and looked at the note, and thought about 30 days and what they had been, and what they had become, and whether it was possible to understand something clearly, and still be afraid of what that understanding required. He thought, "You can." He thought, "I am doing that right now." "Are you going to call me back tomorrow," she said, "with something more practical, or are you going to say what you're actually thinking?" He almost laughed. It was very close. "I'm thinking," he said, "that I bought 23 photographs tonight, and I still can't see your face." "I know," she said. That was intentional. Those aren't photographs of us. They're photographs of what I saw. And what did you see? He said. A pause. Something I wasn't expecting, she said. Something I would like to. She stopped. I would like to continue looking at. He stood in the gallery among 23 photographs of a life he had been living for 30 days, without noticing it was also the life of someone who saw it differently than he did, and he thought about distance, and how distance could be protection, and also how it could be, eventually, simply a habit that had outlived its purpose. Can I come see you tomorrow? He said. A pause. Yes, she said. He exhaled once. Good night, Alara, he said. Good night, Kaylin, she said. He stayed in the gallery for another 10 minutes after he hung up. He looked at the terrace photograph. He looked at the lakefront shot with the blurred figure at the water's edge. He looked at all of them, slowly, going through each one the way you go through something that required more time than you gave it the first time. He was in every one of them, not always visibly, not always literally, but in the light she had looked at, and the spaces she had found beautiful, and the moments she had chosen to stop and pay attention to. He was present in all of those, because those were his spaces, and she had seen them through the particular understanding of someone who had also, somehow, seen him. He went to his office and worked until midnight, because that was what he did, and some things were simply part of who you were. And then he went to bed, and for the first time in years, he did not lie awake thinking about problems he could not solve. He lay awake thinking about tomorrow. That was different. That was the good kind of awake. In the morning, he was going to see Alara Voss, and he was going to say something that cost him something to say, and he had not yet worked out the words exactly, but he knew the shape of it, and that was enough to start. He found her at the farmer's market on Saturday morning. He had not planned to go to the farmer's market. He had looked up her address and intended to go to her apartment, which was the reasonable thing to do. And then somewhere between his building and her neighborhood, he had remembered her saying once, in passing, that she went to the Green Valley Market on Saturday mornings, without fail, that it was the one weekend appointment she had kept through every disruption in her life for the past 4 years. He had not been sure he was remembering that correctly. He had been, he realized, paying more attention than he thought. He parked 3 blocks away and walked. He was not wearing a suit. He had on a coat and a plain dark sweater and ordinary shoes, and he had his hands in his pockets, and he had bought a bag of peaches at the first stall he came to, because he needed something to do with at least one hand, and peaches were there, and they seemed reasonable. He found her in the 3rd row of stalls, near the bread vendors. She was wearing a dark green jacket and had her camera over one shoulder, and she was talking to the woman who ran the bread stall, a conversation that appeared to be genuinely engaged, rather than transactional, the kind of conversation a person has with someone they have seen every Saturday for a long time. She was laughing at something the woman said. It was a real laugh, uncomplicated and full, and it made her entire face different from what it was when she was being careful. He stopped about 10 feet away and waited. She turned. She saw him. For a moment, she looked at him the way you look at something you were not expecting to see in a familiar place. A brief recalibration of the scene. Then she looked at the bag in his hand. Peaches? She said. The stall was there, he said. It's November, she said. They were still there, he said. She looked at him. He looked back. He had crossed town on a Saturday morning, without a specific plan, and was standing at a farmer's market holding peaches in November, and he was entirely aware of how that appeared, and he had decided, somewhere on the walk from his car, that the appearance of things was not actually the relevant issue. You came to find me, she said. Yes, he said. Not at my apartment. You were here, he said. She looked at him with that careful attention he knew well now, the attention that missed very little and judged even less. I was thinking about what to say, he said. I've been thinking about it since Thursday night. And, she said. He looked at the market around them, the stalls and the people and the bread smells and the cold air, and the Saturday ordinary cheerfulness of people buying vegetables and talking to each other, and he thought, here then, here is fine. The arrangement ended, he said, and I don't want it to have ended. She was quiet. That's not very precise, he said. No, she said, keep going. He looked at her. For a long time, he said, I have been very good at keeping things in the right order. Work in its place, family in its place, Distance in the right amounts. Nothing crossing into anything else. He paused. You crossed into everything, and I'm aware that I did not ask you to stay, and I understand why you left without being asked, and both of those things were probably correct at the time. He stopped again. I am asking now. She looked at him for a long, quiet moment. You're asking, she said. Yes, he said. Specifically, she said. What are you asking? He thought about that. To continue, he said, not as an arrangement, as the actual thing. The actual thing, she said. Whatever that looks like, he said. And I am aware that I do not have the best track record for letting things look like what they are. But I would like to try. She looked at him. He held the peaches, and he did not say anything else, because he had said what he meant, and he was not going to pad it with words it did not need, which was the thing she had, possibly, always understood about him. She stepped forward and took the bag of peaches out of his hand. She looked at them. They're good peaches, she said. I hoped, he said. She looked up at him. Kaylin, she said. Yes, he said. I photographed you before I knew I was going to, she said. On the lakefront. I looked at that photograph for 2 weeks after I left, and I kept finding things in it I hadn't noticed yet. She paused. That is how I know something is worth my time. When I keep finding things in it. He looked at her. I keep finding things in you, she said. I don't think I'm done. He let out a breath he had been holding for a long time, possibly longer than just this moment, possibly longer than 30 days. Then don't be done, he said. She held the peaches with both hands. She was looking at him, the way she looked at things she was about to photograph. That absolute, present attention. The attention that meant she was really seeing, not just looking. She said, You're going to be difficult to know. Probably, he said honestly. And I'm going to want to photograph things you're not comfortable with. Likely, he said. And you are going to do that thing where you say less than you mean, and I'm going to have to figure out the rest. Yes, he said, but you're good at that. She tilted her head. I am, she said. Around them, the market went on. People bought bread and vegetables and flowers and talked to the vendors and to each other, and the cold November air moved through the stalls and carried the smell of coffee from a cart nearby, and the city kept doing what it always did, which was keep going, which was hold all the various and particular stories of the people inside it, with equal and patient indifference. 2 people standing in the 3rd row of stalls near the bread vendors on a Saturday morning were not unusual, were not remarkable, were simply part of the Saturday, part of the market, part of the city. She held out her hand. He took it. They walked through the market together, and she stopped to take photographs of the things she found interesting. The arrangement of winter squash in a crate, the steam rising from a coffee cart, the woman in a yellow coat laughing at her phone, the precise geometry of a stack of firewood. And he walked beside her, and held the peaches, and did not hurry her, and did not fill the space between shots with unnecessary conversation. He watched her work. He had watched her work before. He knew what it looked like. But today it looked different from how it had looked in the apartment, or on the lakefront, and it took him a few minutes to understand why. It was because she was not working toward an arrangement, or a job, or a specific outcome. She was not being careful. She was simply being exactly who she was, in the middle of an ordinary Saturday, and she was not performing it, and she was not holding any part of herself back for someone else's comfort, and she looked like the kind of person who had spent some time being smaller than she was, and had decided, at some point, to stop. She looked completely like herself. He thought that was the best kind of thing a person could look like. At the edge of the market she stopped and looked at him. She lifted the camera. He did not move away from it. She took the shot. She looked at the screen. Well, he said. She turned the camera so he could see. He looked at the photograph. A man in a plain dark coat, holding a paper bag, standing at the edge of a Saturday market, looking directly at the camera, with an expression that was open and clear and completely without performance. He looked, in the photograph, like someone who had recently made a decision and was comfortable with it. He looked, in the photograph, like himself. I'll want a print, he said. You'll have it, she said. She put the camera down. She held out her hand again. He took it again, and they walked out of the market and into the Saturday street, and the city received them with its usual indifferent generosity. and neither of them said anything for a while because neither of them needed to. He had said he wanted to try. She had said she was not done. Those were two different statements that meant the same thing, which was, yes, which was, this, which was, the distance has served its purpose, and the purpose is over. 30 days had been the arrangement. Everything else was the actual thing. And the actual thing, they both understood, without saying it, did not come with an end date. It came with a Saturday market, and peaches in November, and a camera, and the particular patience of two people who had learned, in their different ways, how to pay attention to what was worth their time. It came with a hand in a cold Chicago morning. It came with the city around them, going on. It came with what was next.